They wanted me to pay a year in advance.
Gotcha.
I disappeared.
Huh?
I disappeared from the screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't want you to be like self-conscious or anything.
Oh.
So I like dimmed it.
I'm not self-conscious about anything anymore.
So do you have anything you'd like to say to the family, the people who are going to be watching this before we begin, or?
Well, Papa always thought family was important, and I felt when I was growing up that I didn't feel like close to any family, but I think that's one thing that we accomplished with the family, was to feel like a part of a bigger entity. And so I would encourage a family to keep in touch. It's easy to do with the modern conveniences, and doesn't cost you hardly anything. Little time. What's a little time when you can keep track of each other? Say yay when you need to say yay, and oh, poor baby, when you need to say that.
All right, so let's see. First question. What is your full name?
Ellen Margaret Deal Thompson.
What are the names of your parents and your brothers and sisters?
My mother was Margaret Alice Flaherty Deal, and my father was Charles Irvin Deal. And who else?
Your brothers and sisters?
Oh, my just had two brothers. One of them was Robert Flaherty Deal, and he died 92. And John William Deal, and I haven't heard from him for a few years, so I don't know what's happened with him, if he's still alive or not. And he has 4 sons who are, I think, all married and got kids, and I just don't have contact with them, which is too bad.
What are the names of your grandparents?
My grandparents, my father's parents were John, I don't know his middle name, John Deal, and his mother was Sally Nicewonder Deal, and my mother's people, her father was John V. Flaherty. I don't know what the V stood for, if it's Voorhees or what it is. And her mother was Effie May, I don't know. Oh, Hoover, I guess her maiden name was. Effie May Hoover Deal. Or Hoover Flaherty. John V. Flaherty and Effie May.
Do you not remember your mother's parents' names, or?
That's who I'm talking about.
Oh, sorry.
Hoover.
I zoned out for a second.
The Flahertys, and her father was a dentist. By the time I knew him, he was retired.
How did your parents choose your name?
Probably flipped a coin. They thought it was going to be another boy because I had 2 older brothers. And so my mother said she named me after a dancer in England that she'd heard about or knew about or something. And I didn't turn out to be an outstanding dancer. Not for stage, anyway.
Did you have any nicknames?
Nope.
Let's see. When and where were you born?
I was born March 30th, 1926 in Iowa City, Iowa.
Do you remember where your parents, siblings, or grandparents were born, and when?
I think my mother was born in Chittenango, New York, and it would have been 1898. And I think my father was born in Brooklyn, Iowa, but I'm not sure about the town. It may have been another town in Iowa. And he was born in 99, so he was about 6 months younger than my mother.
Let's see. What were their educations and work lives like?
Well, my mother graduated from college, got a bachelor's degree from Iowa University, which is where she met my dad. His mother was running a boarding house, and mother lived there while she was going to school. And Dad didn't even finish high school. He had an argument with the principal and told him what he could do with his high school diploma. He was a football player on the high school team, and I think he felt like they couldn't live without him, but they did.
So how did they meet?
In his mother's boarding house. He lived at home.
Interesting.
And she rented a room, had room and board there.
Cool. And that's your parents, or what were your siblings' educations and work lives like?
Both my brothers had bachelor's degrees. Bob got a master's degree. My oldest brother, Bob, got a master's degree in cello from Northwestern University. And I think John got a master's degree, but I'm not sure where he finished it off, because he went into teaching. And I think he got enough courses eventually to get a master's degree in education. He taught on the Indian reservations out west.
Did he run into any trouble doing that, or?
Not that I know of.
Cool. Just asking, a white guy teaching on Indian reservations, you might expect some friction.
Not in those days. And it's too bad, because that was still in the time where the Indian kids mostly went to the schools on the reservation, and the schools were not notably turning out doctors and lawyers, or even merchant chiefs.
Do you know where they're buried?
Where
parents, siblings, anything like that?
My older brother and my mother were both incinerated, and their ashes were carried off the Hawaiian Islands. My father was incinerated, and his ashes are in Pennsylvania. I think both of my father's folks were probably buried in Iowa. That's where they lived, Iowa City, Iowa. And my mother's mother, I know, was buried in Phoenix, Arizona, and I didn't get the full story on what happened when her father died.
What kinds of things did your family do together when you were younger?
Well, when I was growing up, it was during the Depression, and we did just about everything together, because we couldn't afford to go different directions. So if we went to a movie, we all went to the movie. And if we went on vacation, we all went on vacation. And if we stayed home and sweated out Phoenix, Arizona weather, we all stayed home and sweated.
What kinds of movies did you enjoy seeing, or serials?
When I was growing up?
Yeah.
Well, I liked the happy musicals, and my father always wanted to see the horribles. So I sat through some horrible movies and had nightmares, and I don't remember him sitting joyfully through any movies I liked, but the rest of the family liked the movies I liked. They were about families and animals and, just happy stuff.
Do you have any thoughts about what it was like living in the Depression?
Yeah, it was tough. Most people were in the same boat. Middle class people, and they had to eke a living out of low pay, try to raise families, feed them, clothe them, and we were all kind of. Most of the kids I came in contact with, they were living about like we were, renting a house and living from paycheck to paycheck, and trying to save a few pennies here and there to go to a movie or something like that. But mostly it was the families tended to entertain themselves. They'd get together and play board games and card games, and there wasn't a lot of going to movies. That was a rare treat.
What kinds of board games and activities like that did you enjoy specifically?
Parcheesi was one we had. I can't remember. We had one called Big Business, but that was after I got, I guess that was when I was in junior high school. We got that game. That was neat because we were playing with money. Well, not real money. And the folks taught us how to play bridge, card games, bridge and pinochle and rummy, old maid. That's mostly what we did was we entertained as a family, and we had a radio. And when I was growing up, there were a lot of good radio programs. Jack Benny and Fred Allen and Bob Hope eventually, and Fibber McGee and Molly. And
Yep. And now that tradition sort of lives on in people listening to podcasts on iTunes.
Yep.
And, listening to the radio on the way to work, etc., etc. What kinds of books did you like as a child?
Well, let's see, books. I remember my mother reading us kids bedtime stories from Albert Terhune's books. And those were about a dog in the north, in Alaska, or the frozen north anyway. They were good stories, but they were kind of scary for me because the dog got hurt, people abused it now and then, the whole shot. And then when I got old enough to get my own library books, mostly I got stories about families, trying to live vicariously through other families. I kind of go back to that genre now and then. Cheaper by the Dozen, I think, was the last one I got like that, which was a long time ago.
And this was when you were like a teenager, or?
Yeah, I would have been in high school then.
Oh.
And I got the urge one summer when I was in high school. One summer I decided I was going to read nothing but murder mysteries. And I read nothing but murder mysteries, and I got so I couldn't sleep at night. And so then I'm hearing scary noises during the night. So I got my fill of murder mysteries, and I haven't read one since. And I don't like to watch them on TV either.
I remember something happening like that to me when I watched Halloween in high school. It's like for weeks after, suddenly Michael Myers was everywhere.
Yeah.
What do you read now as an adult?
Oh, well, now I'm reading 17th century romances. I had a bunch of books given to me, and so I'm plowing through them. And they're the kind of books that you can read and put down when you get tired of reading, and then pick back up. But they're not gripping. They're a little entertainment, and but I find that I like to do other things too, like playing computer games when you came over.
Dad does that at work sometimes.
Pardon?
Dad does that at work sometimes when he gets bored.
Yeah, I do it when I'm bored. Sometimes I take a little nap in my recliner when I'm
solitaire.
bored.
What sort of music do you like?
Well, I like the the old swing music from the 40s and 50s. And I appreciated country music. I don't go to listen to it on purpose, but once in a while I hear a song that I like. And I like the old dance music during the 50s and 60s, I guess. Yeah.
Interesting.
I like things like I can't think of the musician. Porgy and Bess and Broadway show tunes.
Cool, cool. I listen to show tunes on the way to school. A lot of places, you know.
Yeah.
They're very. I can understand why you would listen to them because they're sort of in the style of like the older movie musicals.
Yeah. I like George Gershwin and some of that type. And I got some George Gershwin on my iPhone, on my little iPad that I've got, so I can listen to music when I want to. Rhapsody in Blue and that type of thing. And that's the kind of thing that I enjoyed playing when I was playing with the symphony orchestra in Indiana. I enjoyed that kind of music. But I was involved with a lot of classical music, and I liked it. Enjoyed playing it.
Cool, cool. Let's come back to the orchestra thing.
Okay.
Who were some of your friends, like notable friends? What'd you do while hanging out with them?
I didn't have any notable friends. We were all just average kids. I didn't hang out with my same age group until I got into college, and by then you're majoring in something definite, and so you tend to get friends in that major. But I did have one good friend who was in the same sorority as I was. She and I met on the day we registered for freshman class, and she was a real good person. I've talked to her, visited her a couple of times since we got all grown up. Last time I went we stopped there when we'd been to my father's in Indiana. She lived in Indiana. She and her husband, and I called her up and we got together for an evening of reminiscing and chit-chatting, and it was interesting because we met when we first started college, and we stayed good friends the whole 3 years that I was there.
What notable friends do you have now?
Oh, well, I've got you. I have good neighbors, and the bereavement group that gets together that I met through when Hank was passed away. There are 6 of us that still go out to lunch once a month in the bereavement group, and we enjoy each other's company, and we keep in touch by phone and by computer, email, and they're a good group of people. I haven't developed a lot of close friends, and since we moved around quite a bit, and this is the first time I can remember ever being with a group of people for this long and staying in touch and doing favors for, and being concerned about. It's a nice thing to do, to have. It's nice to have family, and it's nice to have friends too.
Let's see. Do you remember the names or locations of the grade school and high school you attended?
Oh dear. Well, I went to grade school in Iowa, and then we moved to Arizona when I started third grade. So we were there for 3 years. And it was in Phoenix, Arizona. I don't know the name of the school. And then we moved back to Indiana, and I started 6th grade. And yes, I remember the name of that school. It was Collett Avenue Elementary School. It was a block and a half from our house. And went to a separate school for junior high school, 7th and 8th grade. And I don't remember the name of that school. And then the high school I went to was Garfield High School. And since then, they merged that with another school, so it doesn't exist anymore either. And then I went to Indiana State Teachers College, which was in the same town where I lived, in Terre Haute. So.
What were your favorite subjects in school?
Well, I liked English. I was always active in music in the band and orchestra, and eventually got in the high school choir. And I liked math and English. I wasn't too thrilled with the history. You had to take it. You're bound to take it. But mostly I had a good set of teachers. Well, when I took 2 years of Latin, the first year I really enjoyed it. And the second year we got this old Latin teacher in who, I don't know, she didn't seem to like high school kids. Surprise, surprise. Anyway, we struggled. She and the kids struggled to get for that second year of Latin before we finally got through it.
Did you belong to any school clubs, teams, etc.?
Well, I belonged to the band and orchestra, and we tried having a Latin club, but that didn't work too well. And no, I didn't go for any more extracurricular activities. Come in.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Are you doing a
I'm doing
a what?
interview with Kelvin. He wanted.
I was going to say, this looks like a microphone or a camera. How are you, Kelvin?
I'm doing pretty good.
Is the interview for a school assignment?
No. It's just it's to have something of Grandma when she passes away.
Sounds like a plan.
Ta-da!
I think it's great.
Thank you for the mail.
You're welcome. See you later.
Yeah.
So, care to tell us a little bit more about your time in orchestra?
Well, I was in the high school orchestra and band for all 4 years that I was in high school. And when I was a senior in high school, my older brother was a senior in the local college and was a music major. And they found out, or he told them some way, that it was known that I played oboe. And their oboe player was graduating that year. And so it was arranged that I could go down 2 or 3 afternoons a week after I finished my classes at high school. I'd go down and practice with the college band, and that got me playing more difficult music. And I was sitting next to the girl who was graduating, and she was a good musician, and so she gave me some pointers on playing the oboe, a difficult instrument. And So then when I started college, I was in the orchestra. I was in the band all at once, and the orchestra leader said, "Will you come play in the orchestra?" And I said, "Sure." And so then, I think the next summer, the old guy who was head of the Terre Haute Symphony Orchestra approached me and said, "How about sitting in with the symphony orchestra?" So there weren't a lot of oboe players, and I played with all three groups for the 3 years that I was in college, and never owned my own instrument. I got school instruments to play, and the instrument I had in college was a nice oboe. It was a good instrument. One I played in high school was an oldie, and it was kind of tricky.
Were you ever in any other clubs or teams in college, like tennis or anything like that?
No, I belonged to a sorority.
Cool. How did World War II affect your life?
Well, World War II was happening when I was in high school, and in fact, when I was a senior in high school, my younger brother was overseas in the Army, and that was a difficult time. Everyone was trying to do what they could for the war effort. You know, food was rationed, shoes were rationed, and you tried to obey the rules to make the war effort successful, and it was. But it actually, when the war started, the depression kind of faded away because there was more money, more people had jobs in the factories, you know, and there were a lot of factories started up. So it was some good, some bad.
You were in the military, right?
Yeah.
I think Frankie said you were like a drill instructor.
I was an acting platoon sergeant.
How was that?
I was just a PFC. Oh, I really I had some good times, but mostly I wouldn't recommend the Army for the normal average person.
What were the good times about it?
Oh, well, sometimes have weekend leave, and yeah, I spent 6 weeks up in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and that was really a nice thing, going to a school for 6 weeks, and enjoyed that. But that was kind of half Army life and half civilian life, you know. When we get through with classes, we'd all go back to barracks and put our civilian clothes on and go into town.
What didn't you like about it, though?
What didn't I like?
Yeah.
Well, the regimentation and the living conditions weren't all that great. You had to, during the training, when I first got in, you had to live in a barracks, and they're just cots in a big room, and you didn't have any privacy, and it was all regimented. You had to march from one place to the next, and it was kind of boring.
Where and how did you meet Papa?
Well, I met him when I was in the Army. I was stationed in Fort Lee, Virginia, and he was in Camp Pickett, Virginia. And he and his buddies used to ride the bus over to Fort Lee because there were no girls at Camp Pickett. And so I came over to Fort Lee to date women. And I was coerced into going into town one weekend with some of the girls from the barracks, and they, unknown to me, they had plans to introduce me to this guy in the Army. So we had, there were 3 couples of us finally, And we used to meet on the weekends and go to a movie or do something.
Are there any pictures of him around here?
Any what?
Any pictures of him around here, or?
Not here. I've got some in the bedroom. Oh, no. I don't think there's any picture of him up there now. Mostly I've got him in the bedroom. My wedding picture's in the bedroom.
Do you mind if I go get it quick?
No, it's I think it's just sitting on the bureau, but maybe it's up on the wall.
Cool.
Be my guest. You find it?
Is this Grandpa?
That's my Hank when he was in the army. Yeah.
Cool. Do you mind holding this?
No.
For the family. Right. So how did he propose to you?
Well, he kind of went in a roundabout way. He said, asked if I'd ever thought of getting married. And I said, oh, yeah, now and then, but didn't seem like it was going to be something I was leaning towards. And he said, well, if you ever decide to get married, consider you have a proposal. So the next day I said, well, did you mean what you said last night? He said, yeah. I said, well, I guess maybe. And he wanted to get married right away. We'd only known each other a few months. And
Wow.
I said, no. And he was going to be shipped out to Texas. And I said, we just write letters back and forth. I felt like I wanted to get a little better acquainted with him.
Wow.
So it was about a year before we got married.
And then you guys lasted like decades.
59 years. Almost 60 years.
So when and where were you married?
We were married in Chittenango, New York on December 28th, 1949. We both had to get Christmas leaves. I was still in the military, and he was out in Washington State by then. So we met in New York State because his family lived there and my mother was there. And my older brother came over from New York City to give me away.
Cool.
Yeah.
What were the names of his parents and grandparents, if you know?
Well, his parents were Jessica Hoyt Thompson, and his father was Walter Frederick Thompson. And what else now?
And his grandparents.
His grandmother on his mother's side lived with the family for quite a few years, and her name was Frances Isabel Hoyt. And she was 80 years old when we had Judy, and so that was her first great grandchild, and she was a great old gal. Her husband died when she had just 3 young little girls, and she learned dressmaking, and that's how she made a living, was dressmaking, making clothes for women, and boy, she was a marvelous knitter and crocheter, and she made little cable stitch sweaters for Judy and for George, for Judy's cousin, and she just did beautiful work.
Do you know when and where they were born?
Who?
His parents and grandparents.
I don't know. His mother, I think, was born in Nelson, Pennsylvania, and his father was from northern New York State. I think his father's father was English. I don't know if he came from England or if he was first generation born up in Canada, or up in New York, or upper New York State, I think. Anyway, his father died when he was just a young boy, and so he and his brother had a stepfather, and that didn't work out too well. So he went into the Navy as soon as he could, and by then he and his brother had moved down to Pennsylvania, and that's how he met Hank's grandmother.
Oh.
A long, convoluted story, huh?
Let's see. What were their educations and work lives like?
Well, Hank's mother, you're talking about his parents?
Yeah.
Okay, his mother went to what they called a normal school, which was 2 years college, and then she could teach in the grade schools in those days. And his father, I think he quit school before he graduated, and he went in the Navy during First World War. No, that would have been during the Second World War. And he learned to be a tool and die maker. And so that when he got out of the Navy, that's what he did for a living. And that's a pretty exacting science. And he was a craftsman. He did a lot of furniture refinishing for Hank's mother, for the house. And he did beautiful work. He was the kind of person that if he undertook a job, he wanted to do it right and do it well, and he did. He was not a very sociable man, but he was an interesting person.
Hard worker?
Yeah. Yeah, he'd go work in the factory and come home, take a little nap, and then he'd be working around the house and the yard until dark. And then he'd go to bed early because he had to get up like 4 o'clock in the morning to get his breakfast and go to work. Didn't get the rest of the family up.
Do you know where they're buried?
I know his grandmother's buried in Nelson, Pennsylvania. Her body was taken back there, and his father's buried up in New York State, near where Ann lived for a while. And I don't know where his mother's, if they took her body back up there or not. I don't know where they put her. She always said she wanted to go back and be buried where her mother was buried, and the rest of the family, that family. So, but I'm not sure.
Where were your children born?
Judy was born out in Washington State, and Mike was born in Germany.
How did you choose their names?
Well, I'd always liked the name Judith, and I gave her my middle name, Margaret, and I thought that was a nice sounding name, Judith Margaret Thompson. And Papa didn't have any druthers about names, and I'd always liked the name Michael, so I gave your father, Michael, and Goodrich was Papa's middle name, so your father got Goodrich for middle name too.
What are some special memories you have about your children?
Memories?
Yep.
Well, I remember Judy's first day of school.
How was that?
Well, she had gone to nursery school and kindergarten because she was the only child. And so when she started first grade, she was all set. She knew she pretty good at reading already, and a very sociable little girl, made friends easily. So that was pretty pleasant. She was always a good student all through school. And Mike he was a free soul. He was a good student if he tried, but he didn't like homework. He loved to read, and that was about the thing that saved his education. That and the track team when he was in high school. They had two brothers who taught in the school who were track coaches, and they ran that track team very, very nicely. They anytime you wanted to try out for any event, if you could do better than somebody on the track team, you went to the next track meet, and they didn't. So that kept the upperclassmen working hard to stay on the track team, and it kept the underclassmen working hard to get on the track team. And he ended up setting a record with a school record, and felt successful.
Where have you lived?
Where did we live, or?
Where have you lived?
Oh boy, all over. We lived out in Washington State. We lived in St. Louis. Well, from the time I was a kid, I've lived in Iowa and Arizona and Indiana.
Any place you like in particular?
I'm sorry, what?
Any place you like in particular?
Well, enjoyed living over in Germany. That was interesting. And I had taken a year of German in college, and so I was able to, with my grammar knowledge, able to communicate with, when I go shopping. And of course Mike was born when we were over there, and Judy was a happy little girl, and I had a maid full time from the time just before Mike was born, so I had a pretty easy life there.
Have you had jobs past the military thing?
Yeah, I'd take part-time jobs now and then.
Who did you work for, and what did you do?
Well, I worked for the Pepsi-Cola guy in Annapolis, making up the bank deposits, and I worked for the state of Maryland in the Fish and Game division. I worked for the guy who was in charge of firearm safety, and that was an interesting job.
Any notable bosses in particular?
Notable what?
Bosses, like especially nice, especially rude, anything like that?
Well, people are people. If you don't care for somebody, you try to avoid them. If you like somebody, you're in their company willingly. If it's by mutual agreement.
What hobbies have you had as an adult?
Oh, well, my big hobby is ham radio. And I've been Papa and I were both licensed hams, and so we belong to the radio club in Pennsylvania, and we're active in it. And when we moved down here, Papa wasn't able to do that, so I did what I could with the radio club. Went to as many meetings as I could and helped out with being a volunteer examiner and helping with the classes. So it was a good hobby.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's see. Any church or religion?
Well, yeah, when we were first married, we were married in a Methodist church, I guess. And we went to Presbyterian church. Papa was born or raised in the Presbyterian church, and I was raised in the Methodist church. And neither one of us felt any special affinity or churches. And when Judy was born, we went to a Lutheran church in Washington State on Sundays. Put her in they had a room where they took care of little kids, babies. And let's see, when we kind of lost going to church when we were down in Illinois. And when we were overseas, we didn't go to church. Although they had chapel on base, we just never got up and around for it. Sunday was a day of rest. And then when we moved back up to Harold Harbor, the first year we lived in Maryland, there was a little community church. It was non-denominational. And so we started going there and supporting it. Then after we moved down here, we got away from that. Or when we moved to Epping Forest, the church was up in Harold Harbor. And so once we moved to Epping Forest, we didn't go to church very often.
How has religion affected your life?
I don't know that it has.
Interesting.
Yeah, we were never ardent church people. We kind of had our own religion, did what we thought was right, and didn't worry about the neighbors. They could do what they wanted to do. We got along with people, had friends, but church was not a big part of our lives.
Interesting.
Uh-huh.
As you know, I enjoy reading into all sorts of phenomena.
Well, different generations.
Around which religious practices have formed.
Yeah.
I think of it as more of like a philosophical deal. But you know me, I just sort of like when I cut straight to the chase, so it's like blah. When I was doing the philosophizing on the couch or whatever last summer, you know, I just sort of reached a point where I was like, well, okay, all this is sort of doing like nothing for me, so
Yeah.
I'll just start like
Yeah.
researching.
Well, I guess that's kind of what happened with us. We never felt the need to affiliate with a church particularly. Mostly we joined the church in Harold Harbor just to support it because it was a little community church, non-denominational, and they needed local people to support it, to keep it going. So.
That's pretty cool of you.
Yeah. Yeah, we've more been community minded than church minded. And all through wherever we've lived, we've been more that way than relying on church or religion. Worked out for us pretty well. We did have the kids in Sunday school when we belonged to the little community church up in Harold Harbor because I wanted them exposed to different religions. And I think Judy went around different churches after she got grown up and decided on the Unitarians were closer to what she wanted. And I don't know that your father's really, he hasn't gotten into that aspect of life.
Not particularly. I don't know if it's like a proper thing to bring up during an interview, but it's like, I know Papa couldn't really, you know, if he was experiencing like near-death phenomena near the end, he couldn't really convey it because of the sedatives. But it's like, if you're able to, and you see anything, and you have anything to say, then I will be like there for you 100%.
Okay.
And I'm promised to be like there for you 100%, just like in general. But you know, if you need anybody to talk about that stuff and you don't want to like get into like an arguing match with Aunt Judy or anything, then
well, mostly I keep things to I feel like I manage my own life pretty well. I do call on your family to help me when I need help, but your family's got their problems too. And you know, the idea of we did all we could for our kids when they're growing up, and we've helped with the grandchildren when we've been able to, but I don't feel like you owe me anything. And your father's being awful good about, now that I need a little help, he's helped me, and Judy helps me when she can. But I think we've got a pretty good relationship now.
Sometimes I worry about whether or not like I haven't been like involved enough in helping out with you or anything.
You've got your own life. Your sister has her own life. You know, we've never insisted that you owed us anything. We just, you know, everyone has to do their own thing. And we both left home, you know, and didn't have parents involved in our business. And I don't want to be involved in your family's business. And I think that's the way to do it. Every generation is different, and I think it's up to each generation to go do their own thing in their own direction.
I know Dad thinks you're like commendable Iron Lady for taking care of yourself over here.
Well,
I'm just saying I'm there for you
yeah.
and stuff.
Well, I appreciate that offer, and I'll feel free to call you if I do have a need for help.
Okay. What did you do to get through the difficult times in your life?
Well, just did the best I could with what I had to work with.
That question's a little broad, isn't it?
Yeah, and everyone, you know, everyone goes through different good times and bad times in their lives, and you hope the good outweighs the bad, and you try to do what you can with the bad times and enjoy the good times. We had some tough times, and when we'd have tough times, we'd kind of look back to the good times that we had, and that helped carry us through the bad times, I think. Good memories. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Did thinking back to like seeing like Happy Musicals and stuff like that help at all after you lost Grandpa, or in terms of like happy memories?
Well, I have a lot of happy memories about my 60 years with Papa.
Yeah.
And we had some tough times, but we had some good times. And after we moved down here, his health started going downhill, and I did what I could to make life pleasant for him and give him some happy things. And we were interested in we hadn't been around you kids much, and so we're interested in trying to get better acquainted with you kids.
The
And
way Dad tells it, he had a pretty like magnanimous personality, good sense of humor.
Yep. Yeah. Well, kind of wry. English sense of humor. Dear. He loved the outdoors, loved to fish, loved to camp, and I think that's what he wanted to pass on to your father. He did, and I think he wanted to pass it along to you kids as best he could. I remember him teaching Ryan and then teaching Caitlin how to play gin rummy. That was one of his favorite indoor sports. And I think he took Ryan fishing a few times before he got too old to do it.
Cool, cool.
Yeah, Ryan used to come over sometimes and stay with Papa if I wanted to go into a radio club meeting or something. And Papa enjoyed having him coming over. Just to be together, not necessarily talking, just having that companionship.
I remember when I was younger, I would sometimes like, if I was watching something like on there and he was in the room, I would sort of wonder what he was thinking about it, because he was like, at that point, kind of like withdrawn into himself a little bit.
Oh, well, he did a lot of reading too, and he may have been reading when you were over here too. So, yeah, it's we didn't at that stage. We didn't do a lot of talking. We pretty well minded each other.
Do you have a favorite holiday?
Well, I don't think of any of them as being favorite.
Do you have a favorite holiday tradition? Like anything that makes any one of them more fun than the other for you, or?
Not really. They're all different. Used to enjoy Christmas because it was a time for the kids to be wide-eyed and in awe. And I think anything that makes your kids happy is going to make you happy. So.
Favorite colors?
Favorite colors?
Yep.
Well, I like green.
Any favorite flowers?
Different flowers have different assets to them. I like an orchid because it's so delicate looking, but I like chrysanthemums because they're so healthy and vigorous. Don't need a lot of tender love and care. So it's and everything in between, kind of anything that smells good or looks pretty, I'll go with.
Any favorite foods?
Yeah. Well, since I've gotten older, I can't eat spicy foods. I used to love hot chili, and my stomach won't cooperate with that anymore, so I've gotten to eat milder foods, and I enjoy having an omelet for breakfast, or having a waffle for breakfast, or turkey bacon now is what I'm reduced to, but that's okay.
Favorite pets?
Well,
I think you had a dog when I was younger.
we had a dog. Yeah, we did. We got a puppy when we moved down here, and that didn't work out too well. We had a dog all the time your father was growing up. Same old dog. And he lasted pretty good. I've got a parakeet now, and that suits me. he and I communicate. He chirps and I talk, and he seems to understand some things I say because I routinely say the same things over and over, so he gets used to the sounds. I don't think he's any jingling genius, but that's all right. He's company. I can talk to him. He doesn't sass me back.
Any other miscellaneous favorite things?
I enjoy my whole house. We've had a lot of work done on it, and it suits me now. I love my porches, and I like being close enough to your family to have a barbecue out. As long as your father's cooking. That's kind of a fun thing to do for small holidays and in the nice weather. And I enjoy the neighbors, have been real nice to me. Joyce is going to bring me my supper tonight, she said. So I'm not to worry about cooking. Well, I hadn't been worried about it.
What trips or vacations do you remember? Which one was your favorite?
Well, I remember when we lived in Phoenix, we went camping for a week in the mountains and had our own tent and camp cots that were hard as wood. They were canvas, but there wasn't much give to them. And it was cold at night, and the lake was too cold to swim in, and Dad kept going fishing every day and bringing catfish up to the campsite, and I didn't like catfish. But Mother always took a box of chocolates along, so after supper, we could each have a chocolate, and that was a treat. Didn't get that at home, just when we were camping. Papa and I have done a lot of, we did a lot of camping with Mike and Judy growing up, tent camping over Assateague, and I guess that's about it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's see. What are some personal experiences that have especially touched your heart?
Especially what?
Touched your heart.
Well, I guess that just goes with the territory. You have experiences that get your attention. When you were born, you and Katie, we came down to help for a week, and you were under Katie's weight. You didn't want to eat, and so we spent about all our time here trying to keep you awake and keep you slurping at the bottle to try to keep you alive. And look at you now. We lived next door to Mike, his girls, when they were at grade school age, and had a lot of happy times with them. Enjoyed being close to them. So it's you take the best of what you had, and that's your good memories. And the worst times are kind of you kind of let them go back in the recess.
What do you hope for your children and grandchildren?
Well, happy, productive lives. Whatever they want to do. Whatever their thing is. I like the younger generation to get to feeling independent when they can, as soon as they can. I think it's easier on their parents if the younger generation can be dependable for using good sense, and of course kids will be kids. The younger generation has to learn from experience and from teaching. We wanted our kids to be independent as much as they could. We never forced them to go out and work in a sweatshop when they were 12, but if they wanted to do something when they were 12 and it was reasonable, we said, sure, go ahead, we'll help. I guess that answers that question.
That's pretty nifty. That's about the last of the questions I have for now.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to cooperate. Hope you got what you wanted.
Yeah.
You remember when you were going to school at Deal, preschool?
I sort of remember it.
We came over one day for Grandparents' Day, and your teacher made cornbread. You remember that?
Nah, sorry.
I remember it.
I remember really liking the color blue back then.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely remember it. Like, the dealness that stuck in my memory.
You seemed happy over there in that class.
Yeah.
And the teacher was a real sweet lady.
Yeah.
And I often think back to that day we went Grandparents' Day to your preschool. Which is kind of interesting that I would remember that out of a lot of things that happened.
Well, I'll try to be happy going forward.
That's what we want for you. Be happy and healthy and successful in what you try.
All right. I'll be there for you.
Okay, that sounds
up to
good.
the end. And thank you for the interview.
You're welcome.
I'm sure the family will appreciate it. Do you have anything else you'd like to say to the Uncle Bill and etc.
Can't think of anything. Just I hope that they have a great life, you know. Wish happiness for everybody.
Cool.
They've,
All right.
They've had their trials and trials by fire and survived them.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hope you all enjoy this video.